Hi, I'm Kate from Sew Into Overlocking. Today's tutorial has been put together just to answer some of the questions that I often get asked about what is an overlocker or serger, what is a cover stitch machine. I often get asked, can I do cover stitch on my overlocker? So I thought I would take you through the two different types of machines, how the stitch is formed, and some of the different stitches you can achieve on them. And we're also going to have a look at a combination overlocker cover stitch machine because having one of those machines can be a real advantage. So let's get started. So this is basically what a 4-thread overlocker looks like. So we have 4 threads on the back of the machine, and along the front here you have individual tension dials and stitch length adjustments, differential feed, usually a stitch width adjustment as well. And if we open up and have a look on the inside of the machine, we're just going to zoom in a little closer. So these are the components that are inside an overlocker. This arm here is called an upper looper, and this one down the bottom is called a lower looper. Then we have the left and right needles. So they're the components that make up the 4 threads basically that are running into the machine. And if I just turn the hand wheel, you'll see how the looper arms swing backwards and forwards. The needles go up and down. And this is actually how our stitch forms. So the upper looper does all the work on the top of your overlocking, and the lower looper does all the work underneath. And then of course our needles are sewing through and holding it all together. One of the big differences between an overlocker or a serger and a sewing machine, apart from having 4 threads as opposed to just a needle and a bobbin, is that you can actually sew without fabric. So you can see here I've got chain from where I've finished my last lot of stitching. If I place my foot on the foot control and my presser foot is down, I can simply chain out. So for this reason, if you're working with fabrics that aren't too heavy, you can just simply place your fabric in front of the foot. There's a blade here in the needle plate as well, which will trim my fabric as I stitch, so I get a nice neat seam. So here you can see I've got a gorgeous 4-thread overlock. I have yellow thread on my left needle. I've got green thread on my right needle. There's blue thread on my upper looper that's forming that whole top of my stitch, which makes it nice and neat. And then I have red thread on my lower looper. So you can clearly see what all the different threads are doing. So often people get stressed about overlockers or sergers and the fact that they have 4 different threads and balancing tensions. Once you understand what each of the threads are doing and how the stitch forms, it's really not that scary. So apart from a 4-thread overlock, you can also remove one of your needles and use an overlocker as a 3-thread. So this is fantastic for when you're just trying to neaten fabric, or you can do some great decorative finishes as well. So this is a 3-thread wide overlock, and I've removed my right hand needle, and you can see I still have my red thread in the back, my blue on the top, and I've got just the yellow thread running through, holding it all together. If you don't want your stitch to look that wide, you can remove the left needle instead and work with just a narrow 3-thread overlock. So that's using the right needle, which is the green thread. I still have my blue thread in the upper looper and my red thread in the lower looper. But that's a really great stitch when you're just trying to neaten fabric that you might be wanting to stitch on the sewing machine. Then you can also remove the stitch finger And this is a lot more complex to go through in just this explanation video. But once you do that, you can get a lovely narrow hem like this. And this is perfect for edging fabrics which maybe don't want to roll over. Fantastic for like linen napkins and just edging any fabrics that you just want a really nice fine hem without creating a true rolled hem. And then of course an overlocker does the most amazing rolled hem. So that's making a tension adjustment, and every machine's a little bit different, so you need to check the manual for your machine. But I'm using just the right hand needle and I'm set up fully for a rolled hem. So the blue thread, which we saw previously on the other stitches only on the top of the work, now wraps around the entire edge of my fabric. So this is fantastic for edging scarves. It's perfect for lightweight woven fabrics. So everything you would have noticed I've sewn so far has always been on the edge, and that's one of the rules with an overlocker. You can only work on the edge of a fabric or on the fold. So the way we can get around that, if you have an overlocker and you wanted to join two pieces of fabric and have it flat, is to use a stitch that's called a flat lock. So, and that again, it's a tension adjustment, and it's probably a bit too much to go into right now, but you can look it up in your manual or follow my socials or my YouTube to get a bit more information on that. But this is a 3-thread wide flat lock. So with two pieces of fabric, I've stitched along. Again, I have my left needle in, my upper looper and my lower looper in red. But with the tension adjustments, I can actually pull that stitch out and make it completely flat. So this side is called a flat lock and that side is a ladder stitch, which has some really great decorative applications as well. So overlocking can save you so much time when you sew. And one of my very favourite things to do on an overlocker is gathering. So most of the modern overlockers now you can get accessory feet for, and this is a gathering foot. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to wow you a little bit more with what you can achieve on an overlocker, which is really fast and neat. And that's why I love overlocking, because the ease of use with these machines to get a really perfect finish is amazing. So I have my frill piece underneath. I'm just going to hand wind my needles in so that it all starts off together. So I have two pieces of fabric. I have a frill piece underneath. The gathering foot has a tongue which separates my two layers, and then I have my top piece of fabric, which is what I'm wanting to stitch it to. I simply adjust the differential feed and off we go. And there we have a perfect gathered frill. My seam is neat and it's even all the way through. So this is one of the time-saving factors that I love about using an overlocker to achieve this type of stitch. So just to summarise what we covered with the overlocking section, when overlockers or sergers were first released in the marketplace, they were 3-thread machines. So they were great for neatening the edge of fabric. You could also do a flat lock or a rolled hem. But with the invention of a 4-thread overlocker, I love it for actually seaming garments, because you do get that extra row of stitching. So you don't need to do a row of stitching on your sewing machine and use the overlocker purely for neatening. With having a 4-thread machine, it's also fantastic for gathering. The invention of differential feed makes them easier to work with stretch fabrics as well. And of course you can always remove a needle and you can use them as a 3-thread, or some machines will even go down to do a 2-thread stitch. You've got your roll hemming, narrow hemming, There's so many applications of where you can use an overlocker in your sewing, and I just, yeah, absolutely love them. So if you do have any other questions regarding overlocking or serging, you can always leave a comment below, or message me through my socials, or contact me through my website, which is sewintoverlocking.com. All right, now let's have a look at cover stitch. So I've just moved a little closer to the cover stitch machine so you can get a better view of it actually stitching. But as I mentioned, this one has 3 needle positions. So if I had all my 3 needles in, I would achieve a triple cover stitch, which looks like that on the top. And underneath, I get that looper stitching, and I use the reverse side of this a lot in my sewing. I love being able to replicate that commercial look on my garments, and as you can see, it's got a fantastic stretch when you're working with stretch fabrics. If I was to remove the centre needle, which I have here, and just have the 2 outside needles, this is a wide cover stitch, and this is the one that you probably see most often on commercial garments. And then you have the option of using the centre needle and one of the outside needles to achieve a narrow cover stitch. And I really like this type of stitching around neck edges, and it works particularly well on woven fabrics as well. So, and of course you can stitch just with 1 needle, which will give you a chain stitch, which looks just like a sewing machine stitch. So with a cover stitch, you can actually stitch flat through the centre of fabric if you wanted to. Most of the time though, you do use it for hemming. So I'm just going to fold up a very rough hem here, and we're going to place the fabric under the foot. You must start with fabric under the foot for cover stitch. Unlike an overlocker, you can't chain. It's not going to form a stitch without fabric. So always place your fabric under the foot first, and do a couple of hand turns just to commence the stitching. And then we stitch along like so. Now with most cover stitch machines you actually can't chain off, and most of the time you're going to be working in the round anyway, but there is a technique to be able to finish. With this brand I can actually chain off, so I'm going to just run this out now. And you can see I have my twin needle stitching on the top and my beautiful looper stitching underneath. And there's all sorts of techniques and attachments and things that you can get to help you stitch properly closer to the edge to get an even finish. But as I said, I've just whipped this through today just so that you can see how that stitches. And then in the world of cover stitch, there are all sorts of other wonderful attachments that you can get. As I mentioned, there's some fantastic attachments that you can get for a cover stitch machine, and it really does give such a professional finish to your garments. So my very favourite is the knit binders. I do a lot of knit sewing, but you can also use them on wovens as well. And I do have a YouTube tutorial already on this. So if you just search my YouTube channel, and it's knit binding for cover stitch. So you can see there how fantastic that edge is. I've used a narrow cover stitch, and it's simply a matter of cutting a strip of fabric, feeding it through the binder, and then placing your garment up to the edge of the binder, and the machine does the rest for you. So, and it's the same way that I've finished the edge of my dress as well. Being able to stitch on any fabric with a cover stitch machine. So I've used some chiffon here, some variegated thread, stitched round and round and round to just basically create a new piece of fabric. And then using a wash-away stabiliser as a base, I used 6,000 metres of polyester thread in the base of this. A lot of hours sewing, a fair few needles I went through, to be honest. And then I placed decorative thread in the looper of the cover stitch machine and was able to create a beautiful decorative piece of fabric. So cover stitch machines aren't just for hemming. Obviously they're fabulous for hemming, but you have so many other options that you can create with them as well. And the last machine I wanted to talk about was a combination overlocker and cover stitch machine. So these are great if you don't have a lot of space in your sewing room, because you basically are getting two machines in the one. But one of the features that I really love about having a combination machine is being able to combine your stitches. So this is an 8 thread, so 4 thread for overlocking and 4 thread for cover stitch. I can sew all 8 threads out on this if I wanted to, but mostly I use it as a 5 or a 6 thread combination stitch. So let me move the camera closer and we'll have a look at the stitch. Okay, so we're nice and close to this combination machine. So you'll see there is 5 needle positions here. So I've got 3 possible needle positions here at the front, which is the cover stitch. So it looks exactly the same as what it did when we were looking at the cover stitch machine. And then just at the back here, I've got 2 overlocker needle positions, so which looks just the same as when you're looking at a 4 thread overlocker. But the needle bar and obviously the foot's a bit wider on one of these machines to be able to cope with all these needle positions. Then we have our upper looper and our lower looper for overlocking. And then just tucked in the front here, which is probably a bit difficult to see, but my cover stitch looper sits just at the front there. So that works in combination with these needle positions, whereas the overlocker ones are set back to work with the overlocker needles. So you can use this machine as purely an overlocker, or you can use it purely as a cover stitch machine. But I think it's when you start to combine the stitches that these really do look amazing. And the advantage of this is you get that true commercial stitch. So you get a chain stitch, which looks like a straight stitch on a sewing machine, with an overlock running next to it. Let me show you. So I have my chain stitch, which I have navy thread on, and then I've got a 3 thread wide overlock, but I could have a 3 thread narrow, or I could have a 4 thread overlock. And with this needle position, I've got it in the 3rd needle position, which is closest to the overlocking, but I could certainly set it up in the 2nd or the 1st to change that distance as well. And you can see I've got the chain stitch there on the back. But it's a really great way of combining both overlocking and cover stitch quite simply. I do hope this tutorial has answered some of the questions you may have had about overlocking or serging and cover stitching. Don't forget to follow my socials, which is Sew Into Overlocking on Facebook and Instagram. There's also my website, which is sewintooverlocking.com. I have lots of patterns and some free downloads on there as well. And there are other YouTube tutorials available as well. So there's plenty of help and support for you on your sewing journey. Until I see you next time, either in the classroom or online, stay safe, take care, happy overlocking and cover stitching.